Peace, beloved. Peace, beloved. Peace, beloved. Whoo, it's Seiko Varner back with another episode of the Fly Guy Show, which is a series of melanated conversations to improve our situation. I want to give thanks to the protesters. I want to give thanks to those who are involved in our civic action. The needle is moved. The needle has moved. Tonight, we're going to deal with part 2 of the Indian problem. And I shared with you that I find this topic pretty intriguing because, as a person of African and quote unquote Native American descent, particularly from the Cherokee culture, I've always found it intriguing with the variance in quote unquote Indian culture and Indian people, how certain portions get pushed to the side. And growing up, when I went to some of the powwows and other events, I was kind of pushed to the side. And, I even had a couple of, family members who identify solely as Indian say, unless you totally, do not connect yourself with your African heritage, there's nothing we got for you. You can't hang with us. And I know that wasn't the entirety of the group, but I did have that experience and I found it intriguing. Brother Frederick Jones L. from the Moorish Science Temple of America has some great information that deals with the Indian problem. And he shared with us in part 1, and he's going to continue in part 2. So back on the platform, back on the Fly Guy Show, a friend of the show, a teacher of the show, a scientist of the show, our Fly Guy researcher. Let's give it up and bring it on for Frederick Jones L. What's up, good brother? How you doing?
Peace, brother. What's going on? Thanks for having me again. I'm delighted. So,
Ashe, yeah. I'm going to fall back. I'm not going to say anything for a little while, and I'm going to let you do the teaching, brother. So everything is in your creative direction. Everything is in your introspective direction of hands, your informative direction of hands. Take it over, good brother. Ladies and gentlemen, the information of Frederick Jones L.
Indeed, true indeed. Peace, brother. Again, our gratitude. I'm delighted. I'm grateful, even to be on this platform, to share information with our people, to wake us up from out of our degraded state, including myself, including me, right? I got a lower self too. I got things that need to be cleaned up, so to speak. I have life sums that need to be worked out. I have a lower self. We all have a high and a low. So this information is even for me too, all right? So I rise and I give praise to the divine presence, the divine force in the universe, all right, which is one with yourself, which is one with man. All right. And we give honors to where honors are due. We give honors to all of the redeemers in the community. Again, we give honors to where honors are due. And I give honors to Brother Sekou for even having me on the platform. And I give honors to everybody involved with the meeting. All right. Yeah. So here in part 2, what I wanted to touch on rather was things that I left out in part 1. All right. So one of the things that I left out in part 1 of the Indian problem, all right, which I believe the first one was titled The Indian Problem, so-called Red Indians practice segregation and birthright theft on our people, on so-called Negroes, Blacks, Coloreds, and African Americans of the Americas. I'm paraphrasing. That's not the exact title, but that's in a roundabout way what the title was. So what I left out of part 1 was I forgot to mention that the in the year 1906, the Pamunkey Nation, they kind of put a clause in the 1979 Constitution where they made it that in order for you to be a recognized member of the tribe, you had to have some standing with the 1906 census. All right. So these are some of the things that they were doing in ways to disenfranchise our people. You see, so yeah, so that was one of the things that I left out, and also another thing was the book on the Moors and the Nancy Coats of Delaware. I believe the name of the book is The Forgotten People. So that
Right.
kind of gets into, things that are more along the lines of Moorish, or rather, that's a work that shows Moors documented in history. But I guess we'll come back to that because I didn't want to skip over. So in 1979, the Pamunkey Nation came with a new tribal constitution. And then they just stated that you had to have some standing with the census rolls of 1906 in order for you to be recognized as a lawful member of the Pamunkey Nation. So yeah, so that's one thing. So so I'm not sure if you wanted to touch in on that, or if we wanted to, to kind of
Yeah,
get
I
your
do
feet.
think that's intriguing. I do think that's intriguing, particularly because I live in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area, 757, 2 up, 2 down, VA. And
Yeah,
the Pamunkey Nation is working to bring a casino here to the Hampton Roads area. And interestingly
right.
enough, when I first heard about it, I said, yeah, man, that sounds great. That would bring some jobs here, particularly to Norfolk. The area that they're looking to revitalize is the area that could benefit from revitalization. That area that they're looking to revitalize is close to some of the lower income areas where many of our people reside. So it could provide some jobs and some income and some opportunities that are not currently there. So I thought it was initially interesting. And then I started hearing something's wrong. Something's
Sure,
wrong. And it's
sure.
that something wrong piece is where I want to kind of go today with part 2. So in part 1, you did go over some of the challenges that were happening. You went over the Dawes rolls and how some of the $5 Indians are now preventing and the Indian problem. American Indians do birthright theft and institutional racism on so-called blacks. We talked
Yeah,
about the tribes that were doing that, and I'd like to go a little deeper now because you're a person of the Moorish Science Temple,
yeah,
and I know that in that book that you talked about, there was some great information that you really
yeah.
wanted to highlight. It was let me see, Delaware's Forgotten Folk, the Moors and the Nanticokes by C.A.
Mhm.
Westcler. All right, so tell me a little more about that because I've often heard people involved in Moorish science and Moorish information use the term Moorish when it dealt with so-called Native American groups as well. So I was, of course, aware that we used that time when we dealt with people of African descent, commonly called Black people, as you say, Negro, Black, colored.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah. But it was intriguing to me, even though I know that many of us who are so-called blacks do have some level of Native American ancestry. To hear the term more applied to the Native Americans or the Black Indians, whatever term you want to use,
Yeah.
was kind of intriguing to me. So maybe you
Sure.
can give me a little context in that area before you go into Delaware's Forgotten Folk. So
All right.
give me some background information to understand what Delaware's Forgotten Folk deals with.
Yeah, true indeed. But let me correct myself because I made a mistake. In 1979, the Pamunkey Nation came with a new tribal constitution. So they didn't make additions to an existing one. They came with an entirely new tribal constitution where they said that citizenship parameters would be based on the 1906 Dawes rules. And of course, they did that because they knew that the whole Dawes Act situation was a way that they could get around, I guess, recognizing our people as citizens of various so-called Indian tribes. All right, so
So
let
do
me
you think
just
it was
go ahead.
intentional? It was intentional. You believe it was truly intentional?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know it was intentional, And every time they come up with new parameters, it's solely to disenfranchise those who they don't recognize as being one of their own. So yeah. And so to your, yeah, go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kind of blown away when family members shun other family members.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know the whole Dawes Act had to do with them, I guess, taking what they called Indian lands and putting it into a trust. All right, the United States government will put it into a trust, and they will kind of be the ruling body over the land through an entity called the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And then the Indians would have like a tract of land instead of what the settlers said, them just roaming wild across the land and not having any boundaries or any parameters. So they would set up a tract of land, what we know is a reservation today. And they put it in a trust. And then, you know, from there, they would, I guess, take care of it as trustee over the land with the various so-called Indian tribes having some type of sovereignty, I guess, because they say Indian reservations are sovereign land, but sovereign land in what way, right? So yeah, so this is what the whole Dawes Act was about, divvying up different tracts of land so that there's no confusion between the so-called white settlers and the Indians. Then it also dealt with them wanting to move the Indians west. So it had to do with the Indian Removal Act, I guess. All right, dealing with that and the whole Trail of Tears deal. So just kind of placing them in an area so that, yeah, go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So give a little context on the Trail of Tears, because I know numerous people have used that term. A lot of us in the conscious community are familiar with it. But and brother Jacoby Ponder, another one of your MST brothers, talked about the Homestead Act. So hopefully we can get involved in the Homestead Act. I might actually invite Brother Ponder to join the conversation. This brother is definitely like-minded. So you've worked with him before. But tell us a little bit about the Trail of Tears so that we have some context.
True. So the Trail of Tears, if I'm not mistaken, is during the president of Andrew Jackson. And what they wanted to do was prior to, I want to say, the mid 18th century, King John III of England told the settlers that they couldn't settle land west of the Appalachian Mountains, and they would have to have royal charters to do such. But royal charters had to be sanctioned by the various native peoples. Like there had to be some type of diplomacy back and forth. So initially, the United States was just the 13 colonies east of the Appalachian Mountains. So the whole Trail of Tears situation, which came to fruition about 90 years later, changed the boundaries. So it moved the native peoples further west so that new settlers coming could have that land that the Indians or so-called Indians just moved west from. So it just had to do with them being removed to what they deemed as no man's land. Like if you get old maps, and west of the Mississippi, maybe west of Pennsylvania would be like no man's land. And then it wasn't the United States. And then we know during the 19th century with the whole westward expansion, this is when they started to march from sea to shining sea, right? So yeah. And to the Moors and Nancy Coke's question, what's interesting about some of that history, dealing with the Moors of Delaware, Cheswold, Delaware, is in their folklore, they say that they came from the Iberian Peninsula in Northwest Africa during the age of colonization. and they amalgamated with the Nanticokes. You know, they amalgamated with what they call the Delaware Indians, or the Indians of the Delaware Basin, which is the whole Delaware Valley going all the way down to the Chesapeake. And let me say this about the term Indian. We know Indian is a misnomer given to native peoples here in the Americas by European explorers, because when they reached the Caribbean and ultimately the mainland, they thought they had reached India. So they called the people Indians, and it just kind of stuck, but it's definitely a misnomer. And the reason that they thought, see, here's another thing. They thought all melanated peoples was either Moors or Indians, because the only interaction that they had with melanated individuals during that time was with Moors on the other side of the Mediterranean, with North African, who they call North African Berbers, and peoples of the Indies. Because remember, they went to India via land caravan with Marco Polo and all of that, which Marco Polo was one of Christopher Columbus's heroes. And Marco Polo was an Italian from Genoa, Italy, just like Columbus was an Italian from Genoa, Italy, before he wound up in the early Portuguese slave trade and then ultimately sailing for Spain in the Roman Catholic Church. But anyway, their only contact with darker peoples was with the what they called the Silk Road trade, if I'm saying it correctly, to India, and then Moors of North Africa. So whenever they seen a dark-skinned person anywhere they sailed, they called them by two names, Moors or Indians, and sometimes they used the term Moro Indian, and they did that in the Philippines. And there's a work to get by an author, I think his name is James Arnold. The work is called The Moro War, and it just gets into the United States fighting with the Moors in the Philippines. And this was turn of the 20th century. Yeah, but back to the Nanticokes. So the Moors of Delaware, in their folklore, they say this is how they came to be. You know, they amalgamated with who they call Indians in the New World. They came from the Iberian Peninsula at North Africa, and then they got here. And what's interesting about that, and I'm going to touch on something that I touched on in my debate with young Pharaoh, when he was saying, well, how can the Moors say that they over here in America, and say that they was in Africa? You can't be over here and then be over there. This is what he was saying. But when you see who Columbus's navigators were on his flagship, the Santa Maria, and on the Nina and the Pinta, two brothers by the name of the Pizon brothers, they were Moors who had capitulated and fell to the Spanish crown. So the reason that he would have Moors with them is because the Moors needed trade routes. And this is exactly what the first chapter of that book is talking about, of Delaware's Forgotten Folk. It's telling you how they got here. So they knew the trade routes. So in order to be on both sides, you have to know the trade routes. Go ahead, brother. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, as I was coming up in Columbus, Ohio, and going to study groups and the consciousness community that I was involved in there as a middle schooler and high schooler, we were taught that some of the navigators that helped create the maps that Christopher Columbus used were Moorish, and he actually had some people on one of the ships as well. So and some of the documents that we read at that time said that those Moors, when they saw other melanated people, used the term that they used for themselves to describe the other people that they saw. And so, yeah, that's great information. And I also think that J.A. Rogers' book, I can't remember which book, it details some of that information as well. But continue. So Delaware's Forgotten Folk, the story of the Moors and Nanticokes.
Yes. Yeah. So, yes.
You went quiet on me, brother. You went quiet on me. You went quiet on me. I'm not sure what happened. That happened before, but that's okay. See if you can unmute yourself.
How about now? Is it good now?
And you're gone. We're good. We're good.
All right, good deal. So yeah, so back to Columbus and the European explorers, who we commonly know as white people today. Another thing is they thought that outside of Europe and Africa, the rest of the world was India. They didn't know that it was different lands. So this is another reason why you find him referring to natives of the Philippines as the Moros or Moro Indians. They'll refer to different groups in the Pacific as Indians. Of course, on this land, they called their people Indians, and that's because they thought everywhere else was India. And I find that interesting because this is what Columbus was saying in his diaries. Yeah.
Right. It's intriguing also to note that the term Moor could have been easily applied to the people in the Philippines, because the first people in the Philippines were the Twa people. And the Twa or the Agopa people are short people. They're dark-skinned people. They have afros. And if you look at them, it's really obvious. And they're still there. They're still there in some of the areas of the Philippines. A lot of my friends who are Filipino, shout out to the Flip Squad, they often talk about, we know that the first people in the Philippines were Black people, were African people. And I want to salute the brother of the Minister of Information who decided he wanted to pop on and join us. I said, hey, Brother Ponder,
what's up, beloved?
you want to join on?
Peace.
Come on, brother.
Peace.
Come
you
on,
guys
brother.
having some great conversation, man. Great conversation.
All right. Good. So, Frederick, this is still your talk, and Ponder, feel free to jump in as you please, as you see fit.
Yeah. So the Moros of the Philippines, which we know that the Philippines was named after a King Philip of Spain, if I'm not mistaken, King Philip II. So but melanated peoples in the Philippines today, they refer to them as Negros Oriental. So that's that Spanish, Negros or Negro. But the reality of it is, but where the original man of the planet is our people, and that's a fact. And the European called them by many different names when he started to explore the planet, which gives the illusion that all of these are different peoples, but we're not. And then I guess through time, through the separation, we adopted different customs, but the culture is one. But back to this European and his misnomers. Again, he called this land India. Then when they found out it wasn't India, they started calling it India of the West, or the West Indies. And our people in the Caribbean say they West Indian, and some don't really know where that come from. Some do. All right. So
Some do.
Yeah. So that happened. And so getting into the first chapter of the book, Delaware's Forgotten Folk, the first chapter is titled Red, White, and Black. Is that correct? Red, White, and Black?
Let's see.
Yeah.
So I'm scrolling through now. The first chapter is Red, White, and Black. Second, The Mysterious Moor. So, Brother Ponder, are you familiar with this book?
No, my first time hearing about it.
Okay. So, the book is called Delaware's Forgotten Folk, the story of the Moors and the Nanticokes. So, why did you find so much importance in the title Red, White, and Black, Brother Jones L? Why is that important?
Definitely. So that title is interesting because reading that chapter and then just absorbing what the title means, and I felt that essentially what the author was saying there is he's talking about the Columbian exchange. I guess he's talking about the melting pot of cultures. Even though he is saying that the so-called Indian is a red man and that the African is black and he's white, you already know we don't subscribe to that psychology. But for sake of argument, what he's talking about is the different cultures, I guess, intermingling, you know, bringing disease, sharing diseases, different natural resources, crops here that the European had never encountered, and vice versa. The European taking tobacco back to England, and then them bringing things from Europe to the New World, like guns and introducing horses and things of that. So it's just talking about the Columbian exchange.
Interesting.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Brother Ponder, what do you know about the first Moors that resided in the area that we now call North America?
Well, like the brother was saying, when it come down to just using the language itself, you know, the term itself will only go back so far in history before you switch the language up and call it something else. So I would ask people to just subscribe to it's a book by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima called "They Came Before Columbus," and he focuses a little bit more on the Olmec civilization. And we're talking about AM, because you have BC, you have AD. This is AM. This is prehistoric time, and you get into the Mississippian culture. Once you go back that far, they were called Moors, M-U-U-R. And of course, we know that the designated language from Portuguese to Spanish, Negro or Black or Moor, the terms just changed. What's important, that the brother pointed out earlier, is these were the same people prior to the word being invented. And that's why, you know, in the Moorish science temple, you have to become a mastermind. And once you understand the words and the language and the context and what's called exonyms and endonyms, you come out of the fixation or the romantical story of these mighty warriors called Moors who ruled this area, ruled that area. And you understand that we're everywhere.
Yeah,
we're all over. We have brothers and sisters right now in Mexico. Let me say it the right way. El Mexico, that know their Moors and where their Fezes. We have brothers down in Rio de Janeiro. Let me say it the right way. Rio de, down in Rio de, they know their Moors.
Yeah.
So
They know.
the stage just been set. Yeah, the stage has just been set under this English. English language is an equivocal language anyway. And I tell the brothers and sisters, anytime we get into a conversation or a debate or whatever the case is, we say, stop playing semantics. Well, none of us are Sumerians. We are Phoenicians. So we're playing called phonetics. It's the phonetics, not the semantics. It's the pheno. It is the enunciation of the word itself when we get into language. So I don't even concentrate that much on trying to convince people that, you know, the Moors from 711 somehow magically came over and had land in 1887. I just quit trying to draw that bridge because, see, Black people, history starts with the first slave ship. Yeah. They don't go back across Atlantic ever, other than romanticizing about Africa. They don't ever go back across the Atlantic. You know, mentally, they have been brought out of Africa, given the narrative of slavery, given the narrative of Lincoln freeing them, then Martin Luther King, and then Obama. Like that's the Black history. So when you try to take the Black line back beyond a certain point, even with the word Moor itself, it's unfoundable. They can't do it. They're unable to absorb information back beyond. You wasn't always called Black, Negro, and Colored were titles given to you by slaveholders.
That's right.
What were you called before then? They don't know about the Treaty of Friendship and Peace. I had a friend last night. They both retired Marines, and they wanted to debate me on the phone last night about Moors, this, Moor, that. And I said, could you guys sing a piece of your alma mater? And they said, what you mean? The Navy and Marine Corps alma mater says, here's where it says.
The Halls of Montezuma.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah.
From the shores of Tripoli.
The Tripoli.
They give me the last stronghold. And she said, I had no idea. I said, that's it. They're saying about it. That's the story, right? That was a great last stronghold. You know, and I show them the treaty of friendship and peace. You know, I show them the documentations, even where the Constitution said that all treaties treaties are actually law of the land. Treaties are above the Constitution.
That's right, Article 6. That's right.
That's right. Even when I show them that information, they still, you know, tussle with it, brother. So I don't know, man. I don't know, but the brother's spitting right knowledge though. And when he mentioned the Moors up by Delaware, part of those Moors there were part of what was called the Wampag tribe up near Delaware, parts of Boston. And then you have to come over to the Ohio River Basin also. You had a group of Moors who were there up until about 1892. Margaret Sanger ran them off. Margaret Sanger had classified them as feeble-minded. And that's when eugenics had started from the American Birth Control League until the 1900s.
Got you. The title for tonight's conversation, the title for tonight's build is The Indian Problem, Part 2. And so the crux of the matter is we're dealing with 3 so-called recognized Native American Indian tribes who have removed some of their people from their birthright just before they're able to get some resources from the federal government. And Brother Frederick Jones L is doing an excellent job of showing us how this is happening. He's shown us a lot of cases. He's given us the receipts. And I say with part 2, I definitely want to know. Look, part 1, you gave the receipts. You showed where the theft was happening. How do you think we can ensure that our people maintain what we are rightfully connected to? Those of us who are rightfully connected to it.
Gotcha.
Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. Well, before I get into that, I wanted to say that a Brother Ponder is right on point when he brought up Ivan Van Sertima's work, They Came Before Columbus. Right on point, brother. And that's exactly where I was going to go next. And the stone heads that was found that they called the Olmec civilization down in La Venta, Mexico, I believe that's what it's called. They was wearing headdresses with tassels on them.
Right.
And
they also had braids.
Yeah, and they also had braids. Yeah. So this is Venta, Mexico. This is Matamoros, and Matamoros means killer of the Moors. They killed the Moors. Mata to kill, Moros Moor. So their whole culture, when they got here to the New World, was about defeating who was in power in the Old World. See, Old World, New World. Old World to them is the Moors in rulership. New World is the start of them being in power.
Yeah.
So, but Matamoros means killer of the Moors. Even in Columbus's diaries, he's not calling Spain Spain. He's calling it Al-Andalus or Al-Andalusian, which is the name that our ancestors gave the land. But to answer your question, dear brother, the way that we can retain our illustrious past and history is just to keep passing the information down, doing the knowledge to things, unlocking the secrets, knowing what was done so that we can know how to counter it, being unified with one another. And then it's also about delivery, because some Moors are hard on our people. And I think it's about wanting to take the information and unify us with it and not be, sometimes I notice in the conscious community, period, not just with Moors, but period. And I even have found myself doing this when I was young in the knowledge. Sometimes your ego takes over, your passion takes over, and you don't even know it, and it's causing division. So I just think delivery, unlocking the keys, sharing it, and just being dedicated to it. So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ashe that or camel walk it. I find that when somebody comes into something that uplifts them, it might be a new diet, it might be a new understanding of the creator, it might be new information that changes their narrative, they become very evangelistic. So, all right. And so in being very evangelistic, a lot of times they try to tear down other people in an attempt to get them to walk their way. So you'll find out with evangelical Christians, you'll find out with people who've just did their shahada and become involved in Islam. I remember I used to deal with a lot of my brothers who were, newborns in the 5% nation. And of course they couldn't tell I was I was involved with the thought. So, they tried to, tear me down and stuff like that. And of course, we would build and destroy with each other. But my point is, I agree that in the way that we present the information, it needs to be done in a way that edifies, it edifies, creates an edification, creates a building. Because too many of us go the derogatory, destructive route. And being involved in the conscious community, I've gotten it from a lot of different sides, but everybody hasn't had that benefit before. Brother Ponder, I know you wanted to say something.
Watch this. See, and I had this conversation before, right, with some brothers. I said, look, man, we ain't got but 8 more days. We got a very short time to get this shit together. So now we have to teach y'all straight out. We don't have time to be pacifying. Black people always want to be pacified and coddled and felt sorry. You know what I mean? You better pick your head up. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, wa alayhi salam, already came and told y'all what to eat, how to diet yourself. The Honorable Noble Drew Ali already done came and told you you're not black, you're not Negroes. Farrakhan don't came. So many don't came. And they tried that strategy of coddling people, tell them they're beautiful and hold your head up and pick your pants up. That stuff over with, man. So for me, I don't even bother. I don't bother unless I get around to people and I go to talking. And just like Yeshua, Jesus said, "Think not that I came to bring peace, but yea, a sword." And that's the sword of peace.
Right.
And and you gotta swing that sword as fast as you can. And if you get hit by it, then oh well.
So, Brother Ponder, well, hold on, Brother Frederick Jones.
Go ahead.
Brother Ponder, how do we take the information that we now know about these so-called Native Americans stealing birthright? How do we approach that? The Fly Guy Show is all about coming up with solutions through conversations. So what are your thoughts? And we don't have to have all the answers right now. We may come back, have a part 3, 4, 5. We're going to have our comments come in. But what do you think we can do to make sure that we can prevent? Does it go to the law?
No, let me ask this question. What Indian tribes are doing that? And I understand we're saying Indian for colloquial terms, but what Indian tribes are doing that? And why is it when you ask a so-called black person what Indian tribe they may belong to, they give you only the hot top 3, which are Cherokee, Blackfoot, and Creek. You see that? They don't know that those 3 tribes were paid off by British soldiers to run and capture runaway slaves.
Right.
They don't know that these 3 tribes are part of the what's called the 5 civilized tribes, the Iroquois Nation, who sold out to European rule. So I think we should focus on the so-called Negro tribes. And I'm saying that so we understand what I'm talking about, like the Wampeg tribe and the Yamasee and the Yamacraw and the Gullah and the Geechee and the Arawak.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be
to resurrect the Yamasee tribe. The Yamasee Moors got recognized in 1995. They sitting on charters down there in Edison, Georgia. The real deal Holyfield.
Right.
So I think we need to go get behind them brothers and sisters who are federally recognized. They don't get a whole lot of attention. The Geechee and the Gullah, they're losing their land day by day in South Carolina.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
You know what I mean? And so, if we serious about it, like the Moors been preaching and teaching about your nationality and your birthright, we need to first declare our nationality as one nation, whatever that may be. Whatever that may be. It needs to be only one though. And this is the part where you're gonna lose a lot of people. Because you can't save everybody. Because you can't save everybody. And the prophet already told us that. You ain't gonna save but a handful, you have things left over. So once we get that concept together about not saving everybody and go after the lesson for ourselves, understand that the Yamasee tribe, like I said again, the several tribes, the dark race tribes who are already federally recognized, who we can get behind. That's something we should do. Really get behind those nations, or just come join the Moorish Science Temple. Hey, we got land up here in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, facts.
We got Baytown. We got land in Alabama. You Circle brothers got 40 acres down there.
Yeah. And just the camel walk, just the camel just a camel walk with the brother Ponder. He's right. Sometimes you have to be firm with our people because some of us are a rough bunch. So you got to show them tough love. Yeah. So sometimes it's warranted, but for the most part, you got to be patient with us too. At least that works for me. You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
Different things work depending on who you're dealing with. But Ponder's right. Sometimes you got to be a little bit more assertive, I guess, and convincing.
True.
But
True. So what do we do
yeah.
for the Creek freedmen? What do we do specifically for the Creek freedmen?
So for the Creek freedmen,
yes.
I mean, they seem to.
What do we do for the Creek freedmen?
Well, they seem to be on the right path. The Creek freedmen. One of the links I sent. One is the press conference before the trial, and the other is the outcome of the trial. They seem to be on the verge of winning their case. So I would say their remedy is already on the way. I mean, the law was on trial. The Creek Treaty of 1866 is clear. The Creek freedmen have standing, and it looks like the judge is going to rule in their favor. But the judge ordered the Creek freedmen to petition the Creek Nation again. Then if they get denied, they'll bring the matter back before a competent tribunal. So, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that we can say to them that would give them a better remedy than what they already seem to be about to receive.
Okay.
I mean,
okay. And all the information that we're talking about today in terms of some of the links can be found on Black Improvement.blogspot.com. The link is right there in the chat. I'll have it up on the screen as well on blackimprovement.blogspot.com. And actually, I want to take a hot second and share that on that site, blackimprovement.blogspot.com, you'll find a plethora of information, articles, resources that deal with our people. And I've been doing that really since 95. So it goes back a while, and it's a lot of great articles. And for those of you who are really interested in more science, there's about 10 to 15 articles on there that I found back in the 90s and in the early 2000s that are still very intriguing and relevant to what the prophet taught. Continue, good brother.
Yeah, so one thing that I forgot to mention when you asked, what do we tell the Creek freedmen or what do we do for them? One thing that we can make them aware of, because listening to a lot of them speak, listening to the lawyer that they now have, who's a Creek freedman himself, they're running with the narrative that they don't have any tie to the land here, but through being ex-freedmen and have some standing with the Creeks, or even ex-slaves of the Creeks is what some will say. They don't look at this land as being their ancestral estate. So one thing that we could let them know is that our culture was always on both sides, and that the scholars say that there was two phenotypes here prior to colonization, and that's what they call Africoid and a Mongoloid, using the scientific terms. So us and them were one. And back to what Ponder mentioned when he brought up Ivan Van Sertima's work, there's a work parallel to that by an author named Leo Weiner called Africa and the Discovery of America. He's a German, European so-called white man, say the same thing that Ivan Van Sertima said. So now they say the same thing that we say. And then there's another work by a Dr. David M. Hotep, and it's called The First Americans Were Africans. And he gets into the whole deal where they're finding remains of people who would be deemed as African and people who would be deemed as coming from Asia. So us and them were together here for generations. And this is the last thing that I'm saying, then I'm gonna give somebody else the floor. A lot of the Algonquian tribes say that they say that the mounds and the pyramids was here prior to them coming from across the Bering Strait. So they say that they came and civilization was already here. And in their folklore, they say that the people that built it are people that come from across a great body of water. And that's the Atlantic Ocean. So
let me tap into that.
Are one. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me tap into that. I'm gonna let Brother Ponder speak. Yeah. My wife and I went to Mexico on our honeymoon. So this was 1997. And so when we got on we touched down, and I love going and visiting and seeing the culture and seeing the people there. And I told my wife, Mexicans are our people as well. And what's interesting is when we started looking at the iconography, the pictures, the drawings, you could see very African features in some of their early depictions of early Mexico. So we went to Chichen Itza, and Chichen Itza is where the pyramid is, the pyramids rather, plural, in Mexico. And so the tour guide was talking, and so he said, and we know that these pyramids were built by a group of people who came before the Aztecs. Anybody know who they are? So I raised my hand, and he said, yes. Now, the rest of the bus was lily white. My wife and I were the only melanated people on there. So they all turned around, some of them smirking like, what are they going to say? And I said, the Olmecs. And he said, absolutely right. And so then he gave some more information. And as we were getting off the bus, he said, wait, I want you guys to wait. So everyone else got off the bus. And he came up to my wife and I and said, we know that the Olmecs were African people. I will show you during this tour where you look and you'll see your people. That's exactly what he said to me. And that's exactly what he did to my wife and I. Now, he said, I can't tell anybody else. They won't tip me. We tried to tip him. He's like, nah, we good. And it really kind of blew. And that was different because most of the other Mexican brothers and sisters we came into contact with during that time, they were trying to get that moneda. So it was a little different. But it blew my mind that they knew that. And he was pointing out in some of the icons and the Meduna Ter, the hieroglyphics that they use. They don't use that term. I'm using our term. And he was pointing that out to me. So it's really intriguing. And you mentioned Dr. David Imhotep. On this channel, Black Improvement, Our Black Improvement, I have 5 interviews with Dr. David Imhotep, one about his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Right. So, yeah, he's a good brother. He's a friend of the show. We have 5. So if you want to learn more about it, just keep watching the videos here on Our Black Improvement. And I did that interview with him 5 years ago. So it's an old one. It's really short, but it's great. He also has one on our channel called The Dogons Taught Meduna Ter, which is a real intriguing concept about the connection with Dogon iconography and the Kemetic science. So, Brother Ponder, you already said what you thought needs to happen. How we should approach it.
I want to weigh in on that part y'all was just discussing, right? Because see, if you understand about the Bering Straits and etc., you got to ask who came over on the Bering Straits. And
Bingo.
See, Pops, I call him Pops. Imam Isa taught that Ho Shin. So it's a man by the name of Ho Shin, the Ming dynasty. There's the woolly-haired Asians. They came over on the Bering Strait, and they amalgamated the Olmec, leaving the remnants of the Khalifa tribe also out in California. And also, when the Olmec and the Ho Shin, they tribe had intermingled, amalgamated, that's when you had what's called the Plain Indians. who lived out in teepees, so on and so forth. They were buffalo hunters, etc. And they gave way to what was called the Toltec, and then the Mextec. You see that?
Yes.
And then the Incans, and then the Mayans and the Aztecs. Aztecs were the last civilizations outside the Mayans that ruled those territories, but their lineage goes back to Ho Shin, or what's called the Ming Dynasty, that came over on the Bering Straits. And then you always see the Western movies with an Asian man in the picture. That was a good right there. The old cowboy movies, always one Asian guy in there. You know, they kind of giving way to the Oriental pretext, the Oriental precursor.
That's right. That's right.
They gave way to those ancient ones out in what we call now Mexico and Nevada and those areas. So I think people need to understand that there were two types, and they always show us the straight hair and the high cheekbones. Those Indians. They never show you the ones on the East Coast. They never show you those Indians on the East Coast. And I think that book that they just brought up did a great job explaining that, along with Ivan Van Sertima. So I think people first need to start with the historicity of it, brother. If they want to protect and preserve anything, they have to understand what they're preserving and protecting. Like, we just can't tell them what it is. You know what I mean? It's not like talking to a block of wood. But these brothers and sisters, they have to want to learn it. Once they want to learn it, that's when everything becomes sacred and secretive, and you can preserve it that way. But just teaching somebody straight out, oh, you know, you guys own this land, and the Moors and this tribe, that tribe, it doesn't hold true to them because they've been told so many times that they're from Africa. And look at Africa now. You can look at Africa and you can see the culture flourishing. A brother and sister can almost tell you what a tekken or a pyramid is, but ask them about a totem pole, they look at you crazy. So they're not being taught what a totem pole was.
And they're the same.
Not taught that the Indian chiefs, the different feathers and different birds in their head, they're not taught that stuff. They're not taught the spirituality of who they worship here, a Hopi deity, then the sun. They had a sun god over here also. They had a sun god on both parts of the land. So they're not taught as much as they're being taught about our brothers and sisters in Africa. They need to be taught about over and over, just drill in their head, you know. And we ain't even got to call it Moors. We know who it is. We understand the empire, but just teach them. And on Facebook right now, on Instagram, but I'm doing that right now. I'm posting Africoid looking Native Americans who've been here, always been here, never been anywhere else but here. You see that? It's my favorite part of the movie Roots. I'm gonna say this and leave it alone, but on Roots, there's a part when Kizzy and Toby was older. They was in the room, and Toby was excited, telling Kizzy, "We're gonna go back to Africa and be free." And Kizzy said, "I ain't from Africa. I'm from right here." And that was a clue. If you caught that part, she was like, "I'm not from Africa. I'm from right here." And
I remember the part.
She had the we call it the do-rag on turned backwards because they used to wear them to the front. The Moabites wore their do-rags to the front, and they made them turn it backwards as a disgrace. And that's all researchable. So,
you know what?
Go ahead.
I remember that part. I remember that part in Roots, and I remember when Roots came out. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, and those there were some brothers who were involved in the Moorish Science Temple, and they came and what you just shared. They taught that, and of course, some of the elders. You know, it was an interesting discussion because some of the elders were saying, "Nah, that's not really what she meant," but the Moors at that time were saying that's what they meant, and it's really intriguing that you bring that back up. You just kind of took me back, brother. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So let me say this too. The brother Ponder brought up the similarities in the culture, like with the whole sun disk with wings, because we know that was done in cultures on the other side of the Atlantic, and we know that they did it here on this side. You know, birds and hawks having some type of significance as far as nature is concerned. So that was a good portion. And something else the brother mentioned when he brought up the Incas, the Mayans, and the Aztecs being, I guess, the offspring of those that came prior to them. And what's interesting about that is even those civilizations were of a darker hue. You don't see them getting lighter until, you know, well into the like 15th and 16th century. And also,
Cortez.
speaking of them, speaking of the Mayans, there's a play on the term Mayan and Mayate.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
So you know where I'm going with that, because you know who some Spanish-speaking individuals out on the West Coast, you know what they refer to so-called blacks as. So essentially what they're saying is they're calling you the original, because Mayate is Mayan, essentially. So they know the real history. They know the real history. And
Yeah. Hey, so we're gonna have to continue this build. I love the fact that we got two good brothers who are really steeped and heavy with that MST, that Moorish Science, Temple Science, and we're looking at the Indian problem. So, we kind of gave our thoughts on it in the first chapter, the first episode of the Indian problem. We went into depth about the problem. This time we kind of discussed some of the ways that we can address it and some information that surrounds that problem that happens. And so we want to say salute to the freedmen who are pursuing their birthright. Continue pursuing it. Fight for it. Your birthright is yours. Our descendants depend upon you winning that fight. Whatever we can do to support you in that fight, let us know. If you want to learn more about Dr. David Imhotep, pick up his book. If you can show the picture of the book again, brother. I know you had the book in your hand. Dr. David Imhotep's book, I'm going to put it on the front screen. Yes. The first Americans were Africans. Documented evidence, right. And as I said earlier, I have some of Dr. Imhotep's interviews on the Our Black Improvement channel. So you'll see him talking with Brother Asar and Brother and Dr. David Imhotep. Those are great videos. I said 5 years ago, they're actually 3 years ago. And people weren't aware who Dr. David Imhotep was when we brought him to the Hampton Roads area. It really kind of blows my mind. I'm surprised Ponder wasn't there. So we got to support our scholars. We have to support our scholars. Dr. Clark was not sent off to the ancestral realm the way he should have. Dr. Ben was not sent off to the ancestral realm the way he should have. We have to support our scholars. We do that by buying their books. We do that by buying their videos and supporting good brothers like Brother Frederick Jones L. and Brother Ponder. Support them in their activities. Find the information. Share the information. Wise up. Grow up. Do better. It's our time right now. Ashe? Last words. Brother Ponder, last words.
Last words, man. Look, man. All I can do is quote the prophet, keep the prophet out front. The one-on-ones teaches us how did the prophet begin to teach people by teaching them to be themselves. Y'all got to learn out who y'all really are, man. A mastermind traces itself back to history. Y'all got to realize that y'all always been here. Always been here. Never was a time you wasn't here. Like I said before, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked the question, who is the original man? And that'll be us. We always been here, fam. This is our planet. Let's not get, so caught up in claiming one piece of land when all the land is ours. And nationality is the order of the day, man. Peace and love.
Ashe. Brother Frederick Jones L., last words.
Yeah, last words. Like my Brother Ponder said, I'm going to quote the prophet as well. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, if I can only get you thinking again, then you can save yourself. So this is about doing the knowledge to things, researching it, unraveling these mysteries, and just knowing what was done so that we can know how to counter it. The pen is mightier than the sword, and the European put us down with the pen. He wrote us out of history with the pen. So knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everything. So study long, study strong, and just know that you are the secret, your long lost history and past. And with that, I yield back, dear brother. Yeah.
Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone. Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone. We have been here forever. We will be here forever and ever and ever and ever. we will be here forever. Get what I'm saying? Understand it. Oh, I'm sorry. I went in my KRS pocket right there.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Hey,
It's
I
all
say,
good,
hey,
brother.
stay fly, stay fly, stay fly. Yo, man, great show, bro. Great show.